Good morning, everybody. This is Friday, April 29th, 2022. My name is Nicholas Hill, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, the United States. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you on this Friday morning?
I'm good. I'm good. It's unusual a little, but I'm ready, awake. It's a beautiful Friday morning, very sunny here in Americana, São Paulo, Brazil. Very dry weather. I miss the rain here. Wish the rain would, come here. But it's a nice day, and we have plenty to talk about. Our kind of opening main topic will be the 2022 NFL Draft. The first round happened yesterday, right, Nick? Between yesterday and today in Las Vegas, Nevada. Was a
Right.
big crowd. I was surprised the big, like, was a really huge crowd. Kind of remind me of
No, no,
2019 Nashville.
yeah, but I thought Nationals crowd was more energetic and better, but that's probably just a little bit of bias. But I mean, obviously, Las Vegas is a cool location. They had that little island set up around all the casinos. It was certainly a pretty cool visual event and a very intriguing draft. Of course, we're going to have to get into all of like the little trades and all the little details. Um, just going down the draft board. What is just like your main takeaway from last night? Because this was the first draft since 1991 where the top five picks were all defensive players.
I mean, this draft was very hard because there were no obvious choices. There were no sure things. Like last year, everybody knew Trevor Lawrence was going to be number one pick. That was obvious. This year was very the draft. I think was a nerdy draft. Was the kind of draft for people who really were into finding that really good defensive end, the defensive back. As you mentioned, a lot of focus on defense.
Oh, for sure. And it really felt like, at all times during the cycle of this draft, the number one overall pick was a defensive player, but it kept on changing. Because for a long time throughout the year, Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon seemed to be the choice. Then it became Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan was a choice. But I feel like to a lot of people's surprise, the Jaguars went with Trayvon Walker, the defensive end out of Georgia, which to me was really surprising because I didn't even feel like Walker was the best player on that defensive line. To me, Jordan Davis is what made that defensive line roll at Georgia. I mean, there's no denying that Trayvon Walker is a freak athlete. But to spend the number one pick on him, I don't know. Like, you could have baited someone into trading up to that spot, I feel like, and got some draft picks for it and to really help you on your rebuild because this pick I don't feel like really gets you any closer to being a great team. I mean, you have so many holes in that Jacksonville roster. I think you could have better spent that pick on somebody else instead of Trayvon Walker.
I feel like Trevor Walker was just the symbolism of how great that Georgia Bulldogs defense was last season. I feel like, he got a lot of, credit. I feel like this number one pick just symbolizes how great that Georgia defense was last season. So, uh, but at the end, as I mentioned, this draft was not, there was no sure picks. So teams had to take more risks than they would have been last year. Jacksonville Jaguars, last year, their first pick was so easy and obvious, but this year they had to, really, you know, go for a player. They had to, kind of make the hard decision. But as I said, I think Travon Walker just, kind of got, that credit from the Georgia defense.
Oh, absolutely. And I was like five picks from the Georgia defense went first round. 5 of them, which is just nuts. I mean, and really honestly, Nakobe Dean arguably was probably the second best player on that defense. He's still on the board. So you arguably should have had 6 defensive players from Georgia go in the first round. I mean, the defense that we saw with Georgia last year is one of the greatest that we will ever see in college football. I mean, just the talent is loaded. And I know Georgia recruits at a stupid high level, but still, to have a defense like that is rare. I mean, 2011 Alabama was kind of like that. But even then, Alabama doesn't put a defense like that out every single year. So it's a very it's a testament to just how good that Georgia defense was. And I think, going into this college football season, a reason why maybe you shouldn't pick Georgia to go back to back, because even though their defense is going to be really, really good, it should not be elite like it was last year.
Yeah, when you have, as you said, 5 players, in picking a draft, of course your defense kind of gets bloated, gets it's not the same as it was last season. So I feel like Georgia probably still going to be one of the favorites, but not the favorite to win the college football the national championship. Another thing that was interesting, Cincinnati also got a top 5 pick, in Sauce Gardner. It just show how their college.
The Jets. Are you talking about the Bearcats? Yeah.
Yeah, the Bearcats. The Bearcats. The because it just show also they they weren't not a fluke into being in the college football playoff. They had a legitimate players, and just as a testimony, have Sauce Gardner, a cornerback, being picked by the Jets in the number 4 pick, just also show because how good your team was.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I gotta remember Cincinnati held Bryce Young to 181 yards passing. So that secondary was legit for the Cincinnati Bearcats. And he got rewarded for a top 5 pick for it, and at a spot where the Jets really needed that secondary help. Because think about the Jets here, they got to face Josh Allen twice a year. They now have Tyreek Hill in their division, they got to face twice a year. They got Mac Jones and continually improving. They got to face twice a year. So not an easy life for an AFC East DB. But
let's go to the trades, because there were a lot of trades in the middle of the first round, right?
Right, there was. So the big one that everyone's talking about today, the Tennessee Titans traded away A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles for the 18th overall pick and a 3rd round pick. With that pick, they selected Treylon Burks from Arkansas. Now, Treylon Burks from Arkansas, I think is a really good player. Like, he helped Arkansas elevate their game, elevate their team. He played with KJ Jefferson, who is a decent QB. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he stood out nonetheless. And I think he's going to be a really good player for the Tennessee Titans. But there's a report out this morning that A.J. Brown said that the Titans offered him only $16 million a year. He said he would have stayed for $22 million a year. The Eagles ended up paying $25 million. Are you telling me the Titans could not have paid $6 million more a year to keep A.J. Brown, a guy who for 3 seasons had a Pro Bowl appearance, had been one of your most dynamic playmaker outside of Derrick Henry, and had transformed the offense from the moment he stepped on the field? The explanation that John Roberts gave me last night was not sufficient, because the explanation that he gave in his draft press conference last night was that we gave a number, Brown, in their opinion, was too high, and they just couldn't come to a deal. But you know that the wide receiver market had changed, and you were going to have to pay. And if you wanted to seriously contend for a championship, you're going to have to pay. That's just the nature of contending for titles. And I think, in a way, they're wanting to play Moneyball. But I don't know, with the current situation in the NFL, you can play Moneyball and seriously contend for a championship. Now, there is another side of this where perhaps John Robinson is convinced that Ryan Tannehill cannot win a Super Bowl, which I would agree with him. I don't think Ryan Tannehill is good enough to elevate a team to a Super Bowl run. He's good enough to take you to the playoffs, good enough to win divisions. I don't think he's good enough to win the Super Bowl. So this could effectively be, all right, we're putting a pause on the championship window for now, and we're reloading. And we're really going to figure out tonight what I think the future plans really are. Because we're going to see whether or not with the third pick tonight in the second round, with that pick 35, if the Titans go with Malik Willis, the QB. And if Malik Willis is the pick at round 2, then get ready for maybe a year or two period where the Titans are effectively in a transition, and then they're going to make another run out here in 3 to 4 years. Now, do I think that's actually going to work? I am not convinced. I'm not convinced of Malik Willis. I don't think he played great competition. I'm not impressed with some of the decision making he had. I think I read something like 12 interceptions in the last 8 games, including 3 interception games back-to-back against Louisiana Monroe and Middle Tennessee State. It wasn't like he was playing elite teams. And the one time he played an elite team in Ole Miss, they didn't do anything. So, I don't know if there was – with A.J. Brown, I don't think this team would have won a Super Bowl this year. Heck, they might not win a Super Bowl next 3 to 4 years. So maybe John Robinson feels like pulling the cord on this helps him. And in a way, you do get to keep all of your defense, which is huge, especially that front 7. But in the modern NFL, you have to be able to consistently move the football. And as we saw last year, the Titans did not defend their number 1 seed because they couldn't consistently move the football. Because when the going gets tough, we get one-dimensional, and it just prevents us from reaching the promised land that the talent could allow us to get to.
Shout out to our viewers in Brazil, Manuel Miranda, and in US, Judy Howard. So we have, viewers from all over the world in Brazil and US. But in terms of this trade, I think, as you said, the Titans play Moneyball. They probably were, betting on the future and kind of, not trusting the current situation because, they draft a wide receiver with the pick to trade a wide receiver. So they literally were putting all that they gave their current player the reality right now for a future player. So it just shows I think the Titans it's not convinced they're gonna be a contender this year. And also, if I was Ryan Tannehill, I would be very worried about yesterday's draft because it literally proves that he is not the quarterback for the future of the Titans. It just shows that the Titans were in a. It have to be a quick rebuild because Derrick Henry is dealing already with injuries. So you don't know how many years you're gonna have top Derrick Henry left. I say probably like 3, 4, 5 year max.
And maybe not even that. I mean, then again, it was just a foot injury last year, so it's not like it's his ankle or ACL or anything like that. But, especially with the whole Derrick Henry thing, I was really hoping that our mindset this year was, okay, we were the number 1 seed last year. We beat basically all of the top teams in the league. We literally went into the Super Bowl champions' crib and blew them out on Sunday Night Football. We're close. We're going to go all in, do what the Rams did. Do what these teams do to put themselves in championship contention. And it feels like the Titans did the exact opposite. Like all the quarterbacks that were on the market this offseason and the moves the Titans could have potentially made. I mean, we were talking in January, February, but Aaron Rodgers showing up. Tom Brady at one point was getting rumored here. We're talking about getting Rob Gronkowski at one point. And look at where we are now. We now cut Julio Jones, which I honestly agreed with. He did not bring much to the team last year. But this move to trade A.J. Brown is a tough pill to swallow. No, I do like the fact that we brought in Robert Woods. Granted, if he can get back to 100%. Because pre-injury, he was a very good receiver. But that was as a wide receiver, too. I don't know if I love him as a wide receiver 1. I just got to believe in Bobby Trees. And then Treylon Burks, as I said, I really do like him as a prospect. And he is kind of an A.J. Brown clone-ish. He is a very big receiver. I think it's like 6'4", 215. He can make crazy catches. He has quickness. In fact, he's probably slightly quicker than A.J. Brown. And we do have to remember this about A.J. Brown. He is injury prone. He was out several games last year with ankle injuries. I don't think he's made it through a single season where he hasn't had an injury issue. But I feel like with the 17-game seasons now, it's just that's going to be the reality. And, if Christian Kirk with the Jaguars is getting $84 million over 4 years, so that's an average of $21 million a year. You can't, request $16 million for A.J. Brown. Because A.J. Brown's worth a lot more than Christian Kirk is. Now, like, if Kirk's worth 21, which he isn't, but the Jaguars say he is, that the Brown should have gotten like 28 or 29 at least. But clearly, John Robinson didn't agree. And, I'm not one to question John Robinson. He's done a very good job as GM. And perhaps he is seeing the forest behind the trees on this. But it's really hard in the moment for me to see the forest behind the trees. But I think we do have to all remind ourselves that the judgments that we make on draft night tend to be wrong. Like how many people would have guessed that Patrick Mahomes at pick 10 would have turned out to be the player that he is? Or, last year we were talking about like, oh, why did the Bengals select Jamar Chase? They needed to protect Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is going to get murdered, trying to pass to Jamar Chase. But we saw how that worked. And I almost feel like in a way as well, the success of Jamar Chase last year has changed the way teams look at receivers. Almost in a way, you have to wonder if receiver is becoming like running back. Because running backs used to go up at the top of the draft all the time. But since Saquon Barkley went number 2 overall back in 2017, it has been a long time since you've seen a running back go up in the top of the draft. And that is because running backs, they take a lot of hits. They're more expendable. And rookies come in often and have very tall, really good production. And last year we saw Jamar Chase be arguably the best receiver. Well, okay, Cooper Kupp was the best receiver in the league, but Jamar Chase was in that second tier behind what Kupp was on a tier all by himself. And that was as a rookie. And granted, he had that special connection with Joe Burrow from LSU. But receivers have proven they can come in and be elite from day one, just like you saw with Justin Jefferson a couple of years ago. And I'm not saying that Trey Burks is going to be like either one of those two guys. But I think teams now are expecting their receivers to come in and be elite starters from day one, which perhaps, if I feel like the line of thinking for Robinson here is, he's basically been, I can have an A.J. Brown who's younger, healthier, and for a fourth of the price than A.J. Brown. And to me, that's what his mindset is from the outside. He just better hope his assumption here is correct, because otherwise he's going to lose the fan base if this doesn't pan out at all.
Oh yeah, and also I feel like wide receiver is really hot in the market because I think quarterbacks right now really like to pick their targets. They really like, it's a special connection. I think never in the history of the NFL or even in football there were such a connection, such a especially with the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow situation. You saw the value of the connectivity between wide receiver and quarterback. So wide receivers know that their value went up the past couple of years. They know that their productivity is more valuable, and also they know as soon as they get in a good position, as soon as they made a good season, they want to get top dollar because they know they get banged up a lot. They know they get injured a lot. They know they are you know uh, target a lot by defense players. So I feel like that's a good point. And again, AJ Brown to the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles wanted to find a good target for uh,
Jalen Hurts.
for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
And Nick Sirianno wants to know if Jalen Hurts is the future of the
Right.
franchise. So they're giving a lot of weapons to Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, the NFC East next year now is going to be really interesting because the Eagles' offense really has no excuse now to suck. I mean, you have Jalen Hurts, who's a decent QB. You've got AJ Brown now. That's your wide receiver one. You have Devontae Smith, who really had a really good rookie campaign last year. And now with AJ Brown in the stable, that it's going to only free up Smith even more. And then you've got your running back stable. Um, I really like what the Eagles have now on offense. And it's really up to that defense to really improve. And they can go and challenge Dallas for the division, I think.
I mean, the NFC East is wide open for me. I think the NFC East is not going to be good. I think,
I don't think the Giants or Washington are winning.
yeah, I think no. I think the Giants are two steps back, and the Commanders are one step back. I think the Eagles should contend along with the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
But,
I mean,
but
it's going to be a
Giants,
good division.
but the Giants fans were happy about their picks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, last night was their best draft in years. You finally get rid of Dave Gettleman, and then all of a sudden they figured out how to draft again. Getting Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. Very solid picks. I mean, this is probably the last year of Daniel Jones. So I'm really proud of them for not picking a quarterback. That would have been a very easy mistake for a new GM to make. But he knows that he's got to build up the roster right now. If Daniel Jones can figure it out with a new coach, great. If he doesn't, toss him. You go get Bryce Young next year or whoever in a year two, and you really start the rebuild at that point. So, it's certainly I think the Giants are in a very good spot right now. I think one team that made an interesting decision is the Panthers. The Panthers, they only had one pick in the top 3 rounds. They don't pick again to the 4th round, so they don't pick tonight technically. And they spent their pick on Ike Ekwonu from North Carolina State, offensive tackle. Right now, their only QB on the roster really is Sam Darnold. So I think really the only option at this point is getting Baker Mayfield, which I think they're going to be resigned to mediocrity again this year.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision, but I mean, at 6, I don't blame him because I don't think any of these quarterbacks were good enough to go. But coming back to the receiver deal, just looking at the run of receivers last night, of course, Drake London was the first receiver taken at 8 by the Falcons. Then you had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jamison Williams taken all back to back to back, and that really caused a whole run. And Jahan Dotson was taken. Of course, you have Treylon Burks. So you had 6 receivers taken in the first round. So that position is really skyrocketed in value. And notice 0 running backs, none at all. So it's a wide receiver is honestly the new running back at this point. It's what the running back position meant 20 years ago. And I think the point I wanted to make is with the importance of wide receiver connections. I'm curious if you're going to see a guy like Patrick Mahomes take a step back this year because he no longer has his main wide receiver and Tyreek Hill. Has Tyreek Hill made Patrick Mahomes, or did Patrick Mahomes make Tyreek Hill? So stuff like that will certainly answer, I think, plenty of questions around the league.
But let's talk about the talk of your town. I guess the guy, I think today he is everybody talking about him in your city. guard
Yeah,
Cole Stranger, picked
Cole
at number
Strange,
29 by the Patriots.
and that came out of nowhere. Like I was sitting down here getting ready for work. I work overnights, and I saw that come across the screen. I was like, "Oh boy, I got to run this," and I did run that this morning, and that was during the talk of our newsroom all morning. It's like, "Oh my gosh, the Mocs had a first round pick. That was the first time in school history. The highest picked player ever was Terrell Owens, who went in the third round in 1996. I mean, they had never even had one in the second round before. So this was certainly out of nowhere. But Cole
I
Strange, though, he has
for
started.
even for the I guess the SoCon conference was one of the highest picks ever.
Yeah, I think there's been other first round picks from the SoCon, but I don't know how many. But I mean, it's definitely a watershed moment for the Mocs. I mean, this is a guy that has started 44 games for the Mocs over the past 5 seasons, and to see him get this opportunity with the Patriots, with a guy with Bill Belichick, and to protect Mac Jones, I mean, that is an amazing opportunity, and definitely the whole city is very proud of him for getting that opportunity, for getting that recognition. And certainly more people are aware of who the Mocs are today because of that pick.
Oh yeah, and I'm running here. So the last time, and there were some. I'm trying to find out when was the last time the SoCon conference had a number one draft pick as well.
Yeah,
Because it's not like it's not like every day that somebody from the Southern Conference goes at number one. But I congratulations to the Tennessee Chattanooga, getting, and it was funny the explanation by Bill Belichick. He was, everybody. I was watching his press conference, and the Patriots B reporters were a little bit shocked about his pick.
oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, you see the Rams' reaction? They were
Yeah,
like, we were looking at him at 104. So they were not expecting him at all to go at 29.
yeah, but I imagine he is gonna be. I bet all the TV news, I guess all the local channels like yours are trying to get an interview with him.
Yeah, I'm searching for this website called Real GM because I found the basketball version of NBA draft selections, and there was one number one pick back in 1954 in basketball. Frank Selvey for Furman was the lone number one pick in 1954. In modern times, the last SoCon player to be drafted. Well, wait, this is not right. Steph Curry was played in the SoCon. Anyway, Steph Curry is like the most famous player ever from the SoCon. But yeah, I don't know if they have a football list to that too. But that's something I definitely want to know because it's very intriguing.
Yeah, I'm also trying to find, and because I mean, and I know the SoCon conference, is on a high. You see teams, getting better and better. Tennessee Chattanooga had a good season. ETSU just beat Vandy. A SoCon team beat an SEC team. I know it's
Right.
Vanderbilt, but still, it's an SEC as far as I know.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, and ETSU was. I mean, Vanderbilt probably would not have won the SoCon last year, for being honest. But it's still an SEC school, right? So, and SoCon is always been a pretty competitive conference, and you always love seeing these teams succeed just because it makes your whole conference better, and it makes you more competitive in the FCS, and hopefully it'll help. Um, and you
But
just hope that it helps your recruiting, and you can and Rusty Wright, who's the head coach of the Mocs, can sell that as a hey, look, we just produced a number one pick. No other school in the SoCon did that this year, so
oh
yeah.
yeah. So it's for recruiting purposes, of course. It's gonna be a boost for the Mocs. But another point of this draft as well is, the quarterback position, because last year was a festival of quarterbacks being drafted. Last year, I mean, you had Trey Lance, you had uh,
Trevor Lawrence, there
Trevor
was
Lawrence,
Zach Wilson, You
Uh,
had Justin
Mac,
Fields. You
Mac
had
Jones.
those were the top five. This year we had one in the first round, and Kenny Pickett staying in Pittsburgh doesn't even have to change locker rooms. Going from the Panthers to the Steelers. The cure. If you want to be a first round quarterback, here's the key secret. You want to hear it? Just you
Yeah.
have to play the Tennessee Vols. That is the key to becoming a number one draft, a first round pick. Playing Tennessee makes you elite for whatever reason. But regardless of that, because that's really the game where he's blew up was in Neyland Stadium. But he's earned that pick. He won't start right away. Mitch Trubisky will be the starter there initially. But if Trubisky sucks, which there's a good chance he will, because I don't think he's that good. There's going to be a ton of pressure from the hometown crowd to play Pickett. And I'll be very curious to see if they give in and do that and just to see what he does because he actually was very good, but he didn't really play any great defenses last year, outside of Clemson. And he played well against Clemson. But Tennessee's defense wasn't very good. Yeah, we have to be honest, they weren't. Most of the other ACC defenses weren't very good. But Kenny Pickett clearly is to me, probably the most talented QB in the draft, and the Steelers agreed.
And also this pick, let's be real, the Pittsburgh Steelers had to make because of you know, the passing of Dwayne Haskins. I know it's an unfortunate situation. I know it was a very tragic incident. We already say our heart
Right.
goes to the family of Dwayne Haskins, but the Pittsburgh Steelers football team had to move on. They had to continue, and without this number two quarterback, they had to find a replacement.
Oh yeah,
That's the reality. It's just unfortunately is the reality of football. Next man up, and you know, but so they had. I think if it wasn't the situation, I think no quarterbacks were being drafted in the first round.
I would agree with that. I mean, so it definitely it forced their hand. I'm curious to see what they would have done if Dwayne Haskins had not passed away. But clearly, it forced their hand, and I think eventually they still would have picked a quarterback anyway, but maybe not with that very first pick.
Yeah, because without Dwayne Haskins, they had to go for a quarterback in the first round because they had to secure a number two. They had to, especially in a transition year where you have your number one quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, which is the most reliable quarterback in the league.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Um, I think that I mean, there's a good chance this whole thing, they'll have to be selecting their QB again in 2 to 3 years. But the rest of the team is so solid that, because remember, they were able to get to the playoffs last year despite Ben Roethlisberger being a complete husk of a quarterback. Like, he couldn't throw it past 15 yards last year. And they still made the playoffs. And you can think a lot of that goes to Najee Harris. But maybe the Steelers are a lot better than we think they are when they have a quarterback that can throw past 20 yards.
And speaking of quarterback, there's still some interesting names on the board. You have Matt Corral from. So the question is also Matt Corral not being drafted in the first round was due to his injury in the bowl game or not?
I don't think he would have been a first round pick regardless. In my opinion, I mean, there was a slight chance he was, and certainly the injury probably dropped his stock a little bit. But like Jameson Williams got hurt, and he still got selected with the 12th overall pick. I mean, a team literally picked up to trade him or traded up to get him. I don't think the injury really changed that much for Matt Corral, in my opinion. And there's still that risk when it comes to those bowl games, and I totally get why players don't want to play in them. But if Jameson Williams could play for, ended up playing, and he got hurt, but he still got picked with a 12th overall pick, and he likely would not have gone that much higher. I don't really think that's a good indication of whether or not a player would have gone a lot higher or not.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's a good point. And there are still some interesting names on the board for quarterback position. We have Malik Willis from Liberty. I know Hugh Freeze offense were interesting, but I think you mentioned that he didn't play in with against power defenses or even good teams. You have Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati Bearcats, which he was a quarterback that got a team from the outside of Power Five into the college football playoff. And you have Sam Howell from North Carolina and Jack Cohen from Notre Dame, which they were solid seasons. I mean, they were not great, but they had interesting seasons. Especially I think Sam, because the North Carolina had some really good games.
Yeah, but somehow it's so inconsistent. Some prospects I'm still looking at here. George Pickens, the wide receiver from Georgia. This guy, I think, is severely undervalued. And a lot of it is because he had to play with Stetson Bennett, who I know he's a national championship winning quarterback. I don't care. He's still not that good. I'm just putting it out there. I don't think he's a good quarterback. Propped up by the talent around him, including George Pickens, who didn't really get to showcase his talent as much as he otherwise would have. Imagine if he had had Trevor Lawrence or Bryce Young or Mac Jones. He would have been a first-round pick easy with the rest of these guys. And whoever picks George Pickens is getting an absolute steal at that position. Part of me honestly kind of wants the Titans, instead of taking a QB there, to take Pickens. Because at the very least, you make up for A.J. Brown with both Burks and Pickens. And then you have, I think, a pretty solid receiving core. Of course, also I mentioned earlier Nakobe Dean. He should be off of in the first 5 picks here in the second round. There's Andrew Booth Jr., quarterback from Clemson. He's also a really good player. I'm kind of surprised he went out of the first round. And then, I mentioned this earlier, how there were no running backs taking. When do we see the first running back go off? There's Breece Hall from Iowa State. I was doing a live reaction with my friend Connor Kennedy from the Instant Review podcast, the NFL podcast I'm a part of, and he was concerned that they were going to pick Breece Hall at number 25. That was a need for the Bills there, but they decided to skip on the running back, which made a lot of sense because no team wants to take running backs anymore in the first round. You also have Kenneth Walker, the third from Michigan State, had an amazing season last year. But those are two of the running backs there that have names. We got Brian Robinson from Alabama as well. So I think those are some of the threads to watch throughout the remainder of this, especially tonight here in rounds 2 and 3. And obviously round 1 has the flash, right, of being the first round. But to me, the second and third rounds are just as important, if not more important, because this is really where your depth comes in. Like, think about it. The Titans had gotten Derrick Henry in the second round. They got A.J. Brown in the second round. So many teams, so many big-time players come out of the second, third rounds. Russell Wilson was a second-round pick. You can win championships with second and third round picks. Cooper Kupp, the MVP, was, I believe, a third round pick. So, or it might have been lower than that. But the day 2 is stupid important. Like, if you can excel at day 2, you are going to be a playoff contender and potentially a championship contender.
But just going back to the first round yesterday, a pick that was a little bit controversial was Kyle Hamilton, the pick from the Ravens, because it looks like Lamar Jackson wasn't happy about that.
Oh, yeah, Lamar Jackson definitely wanted a receiver, and they traded away Hollywood Brown. So it's a really interesting conundrum there. But the Ravens, they're always going to be such a run-first team that I really think they made the right call there, because Kyle Hamilton by far was the best player available at 14. He is probably a top 5, top 7 prospect in this draft. Easily the best safety by a mile. And the Ravens, just to have a good history of picking defensive players and turning them into superstars. So I really like that pick there for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson might not have been happy with it, but I think he will ultimately be okay with it. The one team we haven't brought up yet, especially we haven't talked about, the Packers. once again, not drafting any skill players to help Aaron Rodgers. I mean, who is Aaron Rodgers' best wide receiver right now? An aging Randall Cobb. Like, what are the Packers doing? Like, when both the Lions and the Saints trade up to get receivers, why were the Packers not part of that? Why do they refuse to give Aaron Rodgers help? Why do you sign him to $200 million and not get any receivers for him? You might as well have taken the $200 million and thrown it into Lake Michigan, which you're right next to. So I don't know what they're doing.
But Aaron Rodgers, he was happy about it. He didn't complain. He liked it. He was okay with it. But
yeah, because he has $200 million. What does he care? But I mean, if you're the Packers, you're in the business of winning championships. You're going to be happy with Aaron Rodgers throwing like 40 touchdowns a year to no names. And then when you get to the playoffs, you realize, oh, crap, we have no name receivers. And when we play real defenses, we can't do anything. And we lose in the playoffs again and don't even make the Super Bowl. So,
yeah, it's the same script over and over and over.
Yeah.
Like, when enough is enough for the Green Bay Packer fans? Because it seems like a repeated story. You know what's going to happen. It's like it's getting to a point that is so, like, because the script of Green Bay Packers here. January, hype on the playoffs. They get eliminated in the recent years, even at home, for teams that were not favored, like, the 49ers and even the Buccaneers. And then there's always drama with Aaron Rodgers. There's always drama. He get what he wants. And then in the draft, the Packers blew it, either not picking, offensive players like a good wide receiver, or when they pick an offensive player, is a quarterback to replace Aaron, which they,
they're not going to replace him with.
Yeah. So, there's got to be a point where, the front office of the Packers, especially with this whole beginning of the year situation, has to be evaluated with the draft and, managing Aaron Rodgers, because they have been blowing for years.
Oh, yeah. It's just embarrassing the fact they cannot get back to another Super Bowl of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time, and yet you've been to one Super Bowl with him. I mean, this is almost as bad as Dan Marino.
How many NFC championships are gonna make it and somehow blew it? How many times?
I mean, are they going to make it this year? I mean, that's the question. The NFC is a lot weaker than
last season they didn't even made the NFC championship, despite have home field advantage in a really cold weather versus a team from California, which were not in their best.
And literally, like, Jim Garoppolo didn't even throw for 100 yards in that game.
Yeah.
And you lost it because your special teams were horrible. Yeah, if anything, they should have spent their first round pick on a kicker or on a long snapper or on a punter. Any one of those things would have helped you win the football game against the 49ers.
Yeah, the Niners are going to be the team that we're going to look back in 20 years and be like, God, they wasted talent. God, what a waste of, such a, talented quarterback. And, we're going to see like, oh, what could have been? The Packers of the last decade, from 2010, I guess, to 2023 or 2024 are going to be, wow, what could have been? The what could have been team.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. I mean, the Titans almost now. Like, when they literally, Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown together technically never. Oh, well, no. Well, the A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill team last year didn't win a single playoff game. And that was the only season they were all together. But think about that waste of talent, So it's sometimes you just waste talent. I mean, it's like when Oklahoma City Thunder had Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, and Paul George together. On paper, it looked amazing. It didn't work out. So sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. And it's just going to be interesting to see, because you really can't say how these teams are going to evolve until you see the rest of the draft and the rest of free agency. I think I'm just looking up and down the draft board here. One that stands out to me is Tyler Smith to the Cowboys. I feel like that was a little bit of a reach. Like, they could have gotten some other players there that were better. I mean, you didn't really need skill players, but I feel like you could have gotten like I don't know a better defensive player there. So yeah, it was an It was a very low key pick for Dallas, which is kind of odd because they normally are going all out.
Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys were a little bit quiet in this draft.
Oh, absolutely. So it's a sign that there are adults running the asylum over in Dallas. That's for sure. But I don't know if that was the greatest pick in the world. The Texans to me also had an interesting draft. I love Derek Stingley. I don't know if he was number 3 overall, but clearly the Texans thought so. And Keon Green, I mean, he's a good prospect, or Kenyon Green, but there were some other players they could have gotten there at 15 that I think would have helped their roster better. But at the same time, I can't really fault them for taking an offensive lineman for how bad the Texans' offensive line has been for years now. And it'll
Yeah.
help Mills.
So the round 2 resumes tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 9 p.m. Brazil time. Oh no, actually resumes tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. Brazil time, and then it wraps up on Saturday at noon Eastern time, 1 p.m. Brazil time. So as discussed, there's still a lot of good names on the board for round for the next rounds. I'm curious to see where Matt Corral or Malik Willis is going to land, and what's going to be Titans picks, or even the Jets. I already know they are not going to be interested in the draft. I just know, the Jets are, they're not. I mean, they did the bad, but it's not interesting in the draft.
Oh yeah, I mean, and then it's just gonna be a lot of like trench building and solid picks. I do think the Jets did a good job though yesterday. I like their picks. I think Robert Salah is a good young coach. I don't know if Zach Wilson's the answer though, but they just got to continue to um, they got to continue to build up. But we'll definitely talk more about it as we move on and go for the offseason. In a couple of weeks here, we got the schedule release. So we'll really begin to dissect what the NFL season is going to look like. But I do want to move on to some other American topics. That was our main one. But the NBA playoffs, they are still ongoing. We only have one series left in the first round, and that is Memphis and Minnesota, which has just been an awesome series. 3-2. The game 5 came down to a last-second shot by Ja Morant. And that was the second blown lead by the Timberwolves. If the Timberwolves could just hold on to leads, they would have won the series and pulled off the upset. But they cannot do it. But so far, these playoffs have been pretty chalk. All of the higher seeds have won so far. So in the East, you're going to have Miami and Philadelphia in the second round. You're going to have Milwaukee and Boston in the second round. In the West, you're going to have Phoenix and Dallas in the second round. And then Golden State versus the winner of Memphis or Minnesota. Right now, Memphis has that 3-2 lead. Perhaps the most shocking result here, though, was the Nets getting swept. We talked a lot about this last week about Kyrie being unstable and Kevin Durant just coming up short, and it really reared its ugly head over and over again in this series. The Nets never lost any one of these games by more than 7 points, but they couldn't win a single one of them. And I really think it's an indictment on Kevin Durant. He's not LeBron. He cannot carry a team past the first round in his prime. LeBron could carry a sorry Cavs team to the finals, and Kevin Durant can't even win a game if he doesn't have Steph Curry next to him.
But it also just shows I think Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant come to the realization of how many poor choices they made in the past 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because since Kyrie left Cleveland and since KD left Warriors, both have been irrelevant. Have never even came. They were only one season they came close to the finals. And even Kyrie in Boston, where they made the Eastern Conference Finals, he wasn't really part of the team. Man. When they made, I think the Eastern Conference Final, I think he did not play. He was injured.
Yeah. They made it in spite of him, and those players that he was playing with then have grown up into to beat him, which is a pretty inspiring story. Like with Jaylen Brown, and you have Marcus Smart, and you have Jason Tatum. Like, and that trio has just really grown up, and they've really matured. And I'm really excited to see what they do against Milwaukee in the second round against Giannis, the defending champion. Milwaukee really put the clamps on Chicago in the first round, which I'm not shocked. Chicago really was not great against top tier teams, which really reared its ugly head. So I think that's going to be a fantastic series. And to be honest, I think whoever wins the Bucks Celtics series will go to the NBA Finals, in my opinion. I'm not sold by the Heat. I'm not sold by the Sixers at all.
I don't know. I think the Sixers, it's their make it or break it year. Especially with James Harden. I think Philly has to make it this year. With also there's a lot of pressure. Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers as well. There's a lot of pressure to the Philadelphia 76ers finally make it to the Eastern Conference Final this year because they came in really close in 2019. With the last second bucket by in Toronto by oh my god. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Philly.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, if Doc Rivers had blown that 3-0 lead, they would have blown
Kawhi
up
Leonard,
the entire deal.
Kawhi Leonard,
Kawhi Leonard.
after losing to Toronto in the last second bucket by Kawhi Leonard, the Sixers never came close to coming into the Eastern Conference Finals. But with the loaded team this year and with all Ben Simmons drama, I think there's a real possibility they make it.
Absolutely. But, the Heat obviously led by Jimmy Butler. That's a very solid team. I just think whoever wins Milwaukee, Boston is going to win the winner of that series. But I think it's going to be Miami versus – I still think Milwaukee. I think it's going to be Heat Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Wouldn't be shocked about the Celtics, though, if they beat the Bucks.
Yeah, I think the Celtics-Milwaukee series reminds me of the Milwaukee-Brooklyn series of last season. The two best teams in the conference. So I think it's going to be a really good matchup. And there's a lot of young players in both teams as well. So it's going to be a pretty energetic games.
Absolutely. And moving over to the Western Conference, the Phoenix Suns, they've been a very good team all year. Number 1 seed. Chris Paul was just incredible last night. Was a perfect 13 for 13 in this game against the Pelicans closeout game. You have to. It feels like this might be Chris Paul's last real shot at a ring, and he's going all in for Phoenix here this season. Of course, still got Devin Booker, you got DeAndre Ayton. That team is every bit as good as they were last year when they just came up short in the NBA Finals, and they're looking for redemption. And this is going up against the Dallas Mavericks teams who won their series over Utah without Luka Doncic for a lot of it. Now, Luka got back into it by the end. I still don't really think he's 100%, but Luka is going to have to play at his absolute best for the Mavericks to have a chance to win this series. And I don't see it. I think the Suns win this thing in either 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think my predictions are going to be Phoenix, Golden State, Philadelphia, and Boston.
Do we think there's any chance Golden State loses to the winner of Memphis, Minnesota? I really think Golden State's better than either of those teams.
I think that's the only series that I think is going to go for 7 games. I think Phoenix wins in 5, Philadelphia and Boston 6, and then Golden State I think is going to go to 7 games.
See, for me, I would say Heat in 6. I'm going Bucks in 7. I'm going Suns in 5, and I'm going Warriors in 5. What I've seen from the Grizzlies this year, I just don't think they have enough night in, night out to keep up with the Grizzlies in the 7-game series, or the Warriors in the 7-game series. But then again, the Grizzlies have had some really clutch play. Obviously, John Morant's made some big shots. Desmond Bane's made some big shots. They never give up. Taylor Jenkins is a great coach. I just think in the NBA, though, you got to have the firepower. And it just feels like maybe they're a year or two away, really, from being where they need to be a team like the Warriors to have such championship contention. And then you got a guy like Jordan Poole that's really revitalized that team. He's kind of like, you remember how Kawhi Leonard helped the Spurs in the latter half of their golden age back in the early 2010s? I mean, Jordan Poole is basically their Kawhi Leonard. And that's really helping Golden State a ton. I think they will move on to the Western Conference Finals.
But I think it's going to be close because the way Ja Morant is playing, the way Memphis, but I think they're going to be fatigued with the series. I think fatigue is going to play a factor because Golden State winning 5 and they're resting for this couple of days, and Memphis is battling out, and there has not been like blowing out games. There's there comeback games and close games.
Right. Memphis needs to win tonight. They cannot let this go to a game 7 over the weekend, because even if they win a game 7 in Memphis, you're going to be so exhausted for game 1. And the Warriors have had off since Tuesday, right? That's when game 5 was, or Wednesday, one of those 2 nights. And they're going to have all that rest, and they're going to be ready to go game 1, even if they have to come all the way out to Memphis. And that's going to be a tough call to ask. So I think if Memphis wants to win the next series, they need to win this series tonight in Minneapolis. But it's really going to be interesting to see. I'm rooting for the Grizzlies, but I'm not too confident in their chances next week in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, in the Western Conference semis.
All right, moving on. I know you want to bring this up, how both the Mets and the Yankees.
Oh, New York's on fire. I mean, in football, New York, is down. But in baseball, at least until this point of the season, both the New York Yankees and the New York Mets are leading not only their divisions, but their leagues. The New York Mets are, 700. They won 14 games and lost 6. They won 7 out of the last 10 games. They're half a game up from the Giants and 1 game up from the Dodgers. And, but I know the Mets love to start strong, and then by, the All-Star break, kind of fell apart, but it looks promising. But the Yankees as well, they're leading the American League also with, 6 losses and 13 wins. But the Angels, I hope the Angels stay up, because the Angels, I really, the Angels needs to be in the playoffs because they have such talent on their team. Shohei Ohtani playing spectacular, Mike Trout. It's not fair for the baseball fans and the MLB for this team with so many talented to be irrelevant, to be not come close to getting to the playoffs.
Yeah, baseball needs them in the playoffs. They need the Angels super bad. Like Shohei Ohtani should be on the level of a LeBron. He should be on a level of a Patrick Mahomes. He should have that level of recognition, but you can't get that level of recognition if you never make the playoffs. So they need to make the playoffs desperately. But I will caution on the Mets, though. As you said, it's still April, way too early, and the Braves just got back Ronald Acuna. So the Braves are 9-11. They're not great. They just won their first series of the year last night against the Cubs. So it's not been the best start. Probably a little bit of a World Series hangover. But, the Braves didn't start off too hot last year, and we saw how that ended up. So long, long way to go. We'll, of course, really know where we stand when we get to the middle of summer. All right, 2 quick things here left in the American topics. Talladega last weekend was awesome. NASCAR-wise, this Super Speedway package on the next-gen car is phenomenal. The drafting and everything is where it absolutely needs to be. Great racing. Ross Chastain won his 2nd race of the year and his career last year. And I do kind of want to front tease this. Next week, we're going to bring on a colleague of ours, Dylan Becker. We used to work with him on Rock Solid Sports. He is a big hockey guy. All right, we call him our hockey expert. And he is going to come on next week to talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs. It just got set. The Nashville Predators are in. I'm very excited about that. and he's going to help us understand what's going to happen throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs in the next couple of months. And one last thing, Nashville SC has debuted their new stadium down there by the National Fairgrounds on the south side of town. Always very excited. And MLS, getting those new stadiums, getting those new environments. Curious to see what that does for soccer in Nashville and just the state of Tennessee in general.
Yeah, no, the debut is going to be this weekend. It's going to be on Sunday at 5 p.m. versus Philadelphia Union. So I'm excited to see how the fans are going to turn up. And, I know has been a lot of, excitement. I went to the first ever MLS game in Nashville, and there was the atmosphere was just amazing at, Nissan Stadium. So I cannot even imagine what the atmosphere looks like at Gildees Park. And looking from the pictures, it reminded me of the Sporting Kansas City Stadium, the Children's Mercy Park Stadium, which also has a really good atmosphere because you don't have to build the largest stadium, but if you get the acoustic right, the atmosphere can be amazing. So that's what I expect. I'm excited to see what they debut of the Nashville SC Stadium on Sunday versus Philadelphia Union. I and again we have such a connection with Nashville SC. I covered their first ever game. You covered their first ever playoff game.
Right. I mean, it was a pretty sweet deal. I mean, of course, unfortunately, it had to come during the COVID year, but you know, I'm definitely gonna have to go now that the full stadium is built and fully experience that game. And I'm really hoping the racetrack next week gets revitalized for NASCAR because that will become an amazing sports complex for the city of Nashville.
But moving on to Brazilian topics, it was Libertadores week for the Brazilian teams, and I think only one team lost, which is kind of the underdog, America Mineiro, their first ever Libertadores. They lost it at home after being 1-0 up. They lost 2-1, and now their situation is a little bit tricky. They are in the bottom of the group, 1 point in 3 games, so it doesn't look like they're gonna make it. But still, they're only 4 points behind Atlético Mineiro and Independiente del Valle in the group, and the first two in the group qualifies for the playoffs. But they're gonna play Atlético Mineiro at home, which is not gonna be at home because Atlético Mineiro is the big team in Belo Horizonte. It's like if I don't know, the Yankees and the Mets meet in the playoffs at City Field. A lot of Yankee fans are gonna show up, so it's not gonna be a full crowd for América Mineiro. Atlético Mineiro is gonna have a lot of fans there. I can guarantee. So, but Atlético Mineiro also really doing well. They tie on the road 1-1, but Corinthians was the talk of this Libertadores week. They had to win at home. Again, they lost to Palmeiras badly, 3-0 during the weekend. There was a lot of pressure. They did a social media blackout to like kind of show awareness for hate in soccer, but a lot of fans criticized them. They're like, the blackout were only for social media or for the performance as well. But they answered in kind. They won 2-0 versus Boca Juniors, a team that you definitely want to beat because you know not Boca Juniors, the kind of team that even though they're not gonna have always the best players, their tradition, their strength is cannot it has always had to be in consideration. So they got 2-0, 2 goals from
Oh,
Micah.
so
Yes.
basically, they were boycotting the fact that the opposing fans were taking over their stadium.
What? Sorry.
So they were boycotting the opposing fans taking over their stadium.
Oh, you mean the blackout?
Yeah.
No, it was a social media blackout. It was like from uh, last week, from like Friday 10 a.m. to Monday, this week's Monday 10 a.m. They did not post anything. They did not post their starting 11, no pictures, nothing in any Corinthians social media.
Huh.
Was to show awareness of hate in social media sports, like because during the last weeks, Corinthians players has a lot of death threats on social media. There are a lot of hate, especially by the poor performance of the team. So
Yeah.
Corinthians wanted to show awareness of that. But of course, they weren't expecting to, losing badly to Palmeiras.
Sounds like a lot like like NBA tweets. Like if you go on any NBA tweet ever, there's just like a whole bunch of spam comments, and it's like L plus ratio plus
Yeah.
this just saying all kinds of just crazy things about people.
Yeah,
Um,
but here in Brazil, we have the always threat of crazy fans because they have the organized, groups that always go for chats
yeah,
with the players on their training ground, but not always these chats go smooth
yeah,
or peaceful. So I understand what Corinthians did. I think was a poor choice of time because there was such a, you know, important week, and I think social media's and fans wanted to ventilate their anger. So they it was funny that the outlets that cover Corinthians got the best end of their deal because their social media performance got better because since Corinthians were on a blackout, they didn't post anything. The outlets that cover Corinthians, like the websites that cover Corinthians, went up.
yeah. I mean, people are still going to get their information from somewhere, so
Or
certainly,
ventilate somewhere. They want to ventilate their anger somewhere.
yeah. So do they like still have like comment sections on those websites they could go to?
Oh yeah, they have message boards. They have message boards.
Oh my god! So it's like our message boards here, like
Oh yeah,
Ball Nation, and oh my god,
but imagine those message boards after Corinthians lost badly to Palmeiras. I mean, it was terrible. Corinthians
yeah,
were one of the worst matches I've ever seen. Corinthians were so bad. Palmeiras scored 2 goals on the exact same way. Corner kick, header
oh my god.
on the header on the same way. What
Like, how do you
like
not adjust tactically for that?
Yeah. And and there were questions about the way Vitor Pereira is managing the squad because a lot of panelists were complaining that Vitor Pereira still haven't won any derby games, and winning derby games is kind of a must for Corinthians coach. Corinthians, since Vitor Pereira arrived, lost twice to Palmeiras and lost twice to São Paulo. This is unheard of, and with such a big rivalry between those three teams, especially with Corinthians, you can't lose back-to-back derbies with Palmeiras and São Paulo. You just can't.
Yeah, I mean, derbies, especially in a country like Brazil, are just so important. I mean, we can relate to that too here with rivalry games. You lose too many games to the same team in a row, people aren't going to be happy. I mean, think about here with Tennessee, we've lost 16 straight to Alabama, and we expect every coach to be the one to break that streak. So, and it never gets easier when they can't. None of them can beat Alabama. So in that same case, someone's got to beat Sao Paulo, or otherwise they're going to keep on changing coaches until they find someone who does.
Yeah, and the thing is, I know, the in college football you play only once a year. Your rival in Brazil, you play probably Corinthians are gonna play São Paulo probably two times more, and Palmeiras are gonna play once or twice more. So you play a lot of times a rival. But Corinthians fans, they expect a lot from this team because again, Corinthians has a lot of stars, aging stars, but still stars. Renato Augusto, Paulinho, Roger Guedes, uh, Juliano, Maicon. Those players they came straight from Europe to Corinthians. But the problem is they're all above 30 years old. Corinthians has a really old roster. So I understand Vitor Pereira trying to manage with so many games on a row. Like Corinthians play last Wednesday, on Saturday, and then Tuesday again. So in a span of 6 days, Corinthians play 3 games.
Oh yeah,
We have to
yeah.
manage, especially such a roster that have 8 players above 30 years old. You have to manage, but fans don't understand that. They want results.
Right, and just with all the different competitions that those teams have to play, and how many times they have to play per week, I don't know how any fan can expect their team to win every single game. This isn't Alabama where you're playing 12 times a year. I mean, you're playing what 40, 50 plus times a year. In soccer, and compared to like basketball, where it's only 94 feet, I mean, it's an entire pitch. I mean, it's one of the most exhausting sports to play just because it doesn't stop. You don't get commercial breaks in soccer like you get in other sports. So it's that's a lot. And
Players now averaging 8 to 9 miles running per game.
yeah, I mean, they're
So it's
running a full marathon every single week just in games.
it's a high level performance. And but again, Corinthians fans are happy again, and the Corinthians is leading their group, the Group E, with 6 points. They also got benefited with the tie between Always Ready. Yeah, the team is that's the name of the team, a Bolivian team called Always Ready versus Deportivo Cali 2-2. So Corinthians leading Group E. And Palmeiras, Palmeiras again is the machine. Palmeiras is becoming the Alabama football of Brazil, of South America. They can't lose. They play with reserves on Wednesday on the road, beat 3-1 easily Emelec. Palmeiras undefeated, 9 points, 3 wins on 3 games, score 15 goals, only 2 goals scored on him. 13 game plus 13 differential. The only team in Libertadores, the 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 only team in Libertadores that score more than 10 goals in 3 games. So Palmeiras is the team to be beat. Abel Ferreira, he I mean, he's going to get a coaching job in Europe. I don't understand how he did not land a coaching job in Europe. If Jorge Jesus, that had only one good season with Flamengo, only one in 2019, has able to land a top job in Portugal, why not Abel Ferreira? We won back-to-back Libertadores, won the Brazilian Cup, won the Paulista Cup, on the Recopa Cup, came came up short with Chelsea on the FIFA Club World Cup. Came in extra time. I think of course he renew his contract with Palmeiras, but I think he's gonna land a European job or either the Brazilian national team job. Probably after the season, because the way he coaches Palmeiras is just unbelievable.
I mean, do you think that Palmeiras is making the strides right now in this season to put themselves in that position to perhaps finally win that Club World Cup?
Of course, I mean, Palmeiras is a favorite to win Libertadores again. It would be unheard of. São Paulo came close in the 90s to win back to back to back Libertadores. They won in 92 and 93, and they went to the finals in 94 and lost it in penalty kicks by Vélez Sarsfield. So Palmeiras, if they win Libertadores again, it's going to be unheard of. I think Palmeiras fans, they understand. Today nowadays, winning the FIFA Club World Cup is almost impossible with the economic disparity between South American and European soccer. It's just a fact. But they already, proud of Palmeiras winning back-to-back Libertadores, because again, Palmeiras from a span of 3 years went from a one-time Libertadores champion to a three-time Libertadores champion. So they put in another category. And Corinthians right now is the mock, of the big São Paulo team, because Corinthians only had one Libertadores, and Santos, São Paulo, and Palmeiras all have three. So now Corinthians, we used to be like, oh, with Palmeiras, oh, we have the same number of Libertadores. We have but I won the FIFA Club World Cup and you didn't. Now Palmeiras is another category.
Oh, absolutely. And they have a chance maybe to get on a league of their own with four, which that would be that put them in their own category, I guess, without the
Yeah,
World Cup.
they'll be in Brazil. If Palmeiras win this year, Palmeiras will be the highest winning Libertadores, champion of all time in Brazil.
And that with just three straight, I mean, which is pretty incredible. Shows you the parity of that award between Brazil and Argentina, and just how
Yeah,
hard it won.
Argentina still leads have more winners in Libertadores because of the past, but the disparity of soccer between Brazil and Argentina has grown a lot. Brazilian, soccer analyst jokes. Only if Ball kind of, tricks or pick referees or somehow on the backstage do something, it's going to be another Brazilian final. It's going to be because the disparity between Brazil and the rest of South American soccer has increased a lot.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
And so that's kind of like the situation in Libertadores. So next week it's round week 4 for Libertadores, and Palmeiras already qualified. Palmeiras are qualified, but the other teams are fighting for their lives. It's going to be an interesting week 4 in Libertadores. Flamengo also doing well in Libertadores, one on the road, 3-2. But the talk of Flamengo is because former Flamengo head coach Jorge Jesus, the one that I just mentioned, who had an incredible season in 2019, suddenly came to Rio de Janeiro. And when he was asked why he is here, he was like, "Oh, I just want to, visit the city. I just want to enjoy the beach. I'm not watching. I am not contacting any Flamengo front office people or players or anything. But today, allegedly, he's gonna have a lunch with Flamengo players, and this guy likes to create chaos because imagine Paulo Souza. He's now finally, getting some recognition, getting the team right. And then you have the former coach, the one that fans love it, the media love it, in Rio here. So I imagine that it's going to be chaotic week for Flamengo.
Hmm. Very, very interesting. Yeah, it sounds like if they don't win this week, then there's gonna be some wholesale changes coming.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, because now if Flamengo start losing, oh, Jorge Jesus is in Brazil. He's here. Get him. Because Flamengo is gonna play for the Brazilian Cup this week, so it's not gonna be a tough opponent. It's gonna be a Juazeirense, which is a term from the lower division. So I think it's gonna be a smooth weekend for Flamengo. But still, I it's gonna be fans are already in the airport taking pictures. It's for comparison. It's like if Nick Saban retires from Alabama, and then when the next coach comes in, and then he is not doing well, he suddenly decided to visit Tuscaloosa.
Hmm. That would be just insane. I can only imagine like a coach coming into that so much pressure. You don't have any time to build a culture. You just have to go in there like if you don't win immediately, you're out.
Yeah, and Flamengo's running through coaches since Jorge Jesus left. Uh, they got I think 4 coaches. They got Domenech, they was in MLS, then Rogério Ceni, Renato Gaúcho, and now Paulo Souza. So they have 4 coaches in the last 2 years trying to find the replacement for Jorge Jesus.
Mhm.
So they're trying to build a culture there, but it's not easy when the former head coach suddenly out of nowhere visits Rio. I don't know why he's here. Like I think he wants to create chaos because he does not have any relatives here. I know he's unemployed right now. Since he was fired by Benfica in January, but it's just interesting this kind of stories that happen in Brazilian soccer.
And it really is. I mean, it sounds like something that would happen in the SEC. Like it's like if Lane Kiffin just comes around and hangs out in Knoxville for no reason. Like, what are you
Yeah,
doing here? What?
yeah. If yeah, it's a good comparison. It's like if Lane Kiffin, let's say when he was fired by Oakland, suddenly decided to visit Knoxville when he was unemployed out of nowhere. Just because. Imagine what happened with Derek Dooley or
Yeah.
with Jones. There will be talks.
Yeah. Like, what are they doing? Like, why are you doing? Like, if Jeremy Pruitt ever shows his face again in Tennessee,
No, I think it's different because James Pruitt did not have a successful season, and fans did not love him. Lane Kiffin and Jorge Jesus, they were beloved by the fans.
yeah.
Especially Jorge Jesus, because he delivered one of the most magical seasons for a team ever. He won Libertadores and Brazilian National Championship in the same weekend.
Wow. I mean, and
So
that,
it's unheard of.
yeah,
In the final was in the final Libertadores was something also magical. They were losing 1-0 up until the 89 minute. And then in extra time, they scored 2 goals to win the final. So also the final game was also magical.
Yeah. So basically, it sounds like it's the ex-girlfriend that some of the fans want back.
Oh
Basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
the, a lot of panelists in soccer in Brazil here say Flamengo is kind of paralyzed by that 2019 season. They're
Yeah.
still expecting that performance, but the players have aged. You know, the coach left, so you can't expect. That's why Renato Gaúcho was fired after losing the Libertadores final because it was like win or go home.
Yeah. It's always tough. I mean, it's almost like LSU, and they had their match in 2019, but you got to give them credit where like they still recognize that okay, Coach O probably can't repeat that again. That was just literally the perfect storm for his success to occur.
Yeah, I know it's different in college football because you lose a lot of players due to the draft, so you expect to, not deliver as well. But I think LSU and Flamengo 29 season are so magical that the fans are always want to get that back, but it's hard.
Oh yeah, it's always going to be like that for any team. Like Tennessee fans were talking about 1998, so it's
Yeah, and Corinthians fans still talk about 2012. This week Corinthians play Boca Juniors, the team that they beat in the Libertadores final in 2012, and fans still kind of remember that. Corinthians made a commemorative T-shirt about the 10th anniversary of the title. Especially this week, they released a T-shirt because the opponent of this week's game, Boca Juniors, was the same opponent in the Libertadores final that year. So you have, and it's a good topic for another day, like teams that get paralyzed by great seasons.
mhm. Absolutely. It's I was thinking, 2010 Auburn was a team like that. The Jets in the early 2010s were kind of like that.
Yeah,
Um, so maybe even the Titans to an extent, like 2008 was a season like that. They were trying to hold on to some of those players for too long, and it just kind of set them back for an entire decade.
yeah. So definitely is gonna good topic for another show, but I'm gonna go straight to my hot take because also involve Libertadores because it's a disgrace the amount of racism that is happening with Brazilian teams, especially when they play Argentinian teams. A couple of weeks ago, Fortaleza play River Plate in Argentina, and fans were throwing bananas and imitating monkeys.
Oh my
Uh, and then this week, an Argentinian fan from Boca Juniors here in Sao Paulo were also imitating monkeys and symbolizing bananas to the fans. He was arrested, but he was released on a 3,000 reais bail, and then he left to Argentina again, and even posted on Instagram, a picture laughing and with monkey emojis.
Oh my god! I mean, how long has that been going on? With how long have they been doing that?
I mean, this history has been document. The first documented ever was in the 1920s,
Mm,
but it's something that goes on and off. Especially, I think right now, the anger of Argentinians and even South American fans toward Brazilian teams has gone bigger
mhm,
because of the disparity. The last two Libertadores finals were Brazilian teams,
mhm.
so you go a lot of resentment. But then that doesn't excuse the fact that it's disgraceful the amount of racism Brazilian teams have suffered, especially this season with Argentinian and South American fans.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't. I mean, at the end of the day, these are just sports. You cannot let it cloud your judgment of your opinions of the actual person because we're all people. We're all competing and whatnot. But you can't start denigrating people as monkeys and just doing that crap. I mean that's ridiculous. You know, um, and I know there's a lot of bad blood between Argentina and Brazil, but you have to maintain an aura of decorum when it comes to sports and just
Yeah,
into society in general.
I think I'm gonna pull up the picture of the disgraceful fan. Let me trying to find the picture here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And what
found
I'm
it.
thinking too here is this the type of thing where like it starts to cause like inter like government issues even Because like, at what point does like the Brazilian government go to the Argentinian government like, hey, could you like get your like people to knock this off? You know?
So on the right, he was arrested. On the picture on the right, he was arrested. In the picture on the left is he posting on Instagram, acá no pasó nada. Is a translation, you know, no problem or cool, nothing happened here. And then the picture of the monkey.
Mm.
So he was joking the Brazilian judicial system, and also there were rumors that the Argentinian ambassador paid the bail. He paid the 3,000 reais bail so the fan could leave to Argentina.
I mean that certainly, um, I mean that would offend me as if I were Jair Bolsonaro. I mean, I'd be like, look, you can't get involved in situations like this when we're trying to protect our people, our fans, or players. And if you're going to come and visit our country, you're not going to come in and disrespect us like that. Uh,
No, yeah, I think there's gonna be a point where the Brazilian government has to step in and the clubs have to unite, because I know Comembol is not Brazilians. You know, the Comembol, the soccer confederation for South America, does not have good eyes for Brazil. Again, Brazil is the only Portuguese speaking country in South America, so Brazil is kind of the loner in the other countries. So Comebol is not a big fan of Brazil. Let's
mhm.
just say that.
Yeah, but I do feel like that at some point there's got to be some sort of pressure to for them to kind of crack down on this, and just for some of these other countries to crack down on this. But it sounds like there's some other stuff. 'Cause I'm looking up the topic now, so I'm seeing where the Argentine president said that Brazilian emerged from the jungle last year.
Yes, yes, he said that. Like he was saying like, oh, Argentinians came from boats, and Brazilians came from the jungle. And it's because Argentina still holds the pride of last century, where they were the best country in South America. They have European stand like style,
Hmm.
but this is over. They are economically doomed. They're not doing well in soccer. There's a lot of violence in the stands, especially with the Barra Bravas, and that's why this fan was released. He probably had connections with the Boca Juniors Barra Bravas, and the leader of probably one of the leaders of Boca Juniors Barra Brava personally contact the Argentinian ambassador in Brazil to release him, just
Man,
to see how deep this is.
that sounds like just a massive web that shouldn't be there at all. Because the thing about, I mean, obviously, just kind of going outside the whole realm of sports. Argentina, the whole idea of them being European. At one point they did fight a war against the UK, and they, thought they deserved to win that war, and they were trying to fight over the Falkland Islands, but it didn't go well for them, and that really sent them into a tail spiral, into a tailspin afterwards, especially economically, because it ended up destroying their military dictatorship. And I almost wonder if part of this behavior stems from that, where they feel embarrassed from losing that war. And I don't know how much they think about it. The Falklands War 40 years after the fact.
I think they got how can I say, they got the revenge on the field. Argentinian fans, when we talk about the Falkland Island, they refer to the God hands. That's why the mythology of Maradona got so big, because what team he scored the hands God goal versus
England.
England in the 1982 World Cup quarterfinals game. So that's why Maradona is so beloved, I feel like, because he revenge on the field what Argentina lost on the war.
Yeah. And like the only way Messi could like come close to that is if he were to score a World Cup final goal against like Brazil.
I think if he had won the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, he would have come to that level. I think even if he wins the World Cup, I think it's not going to be the same, especially with now Maradona has passed away, because now Maradona has been like a legend in the sky. It's a different talk, I feel like.
Yeah. They just definitely sound like a very mythological people, you know, and I don't know, but clearly there's no excuse for their behavior, and they really shouldn't treat y'all like that. That is ridiculous, and
It's ridiculous that Ball have not punished a team. None. No
I
punishment,
would say
no
FIFA should.
fine, no
But
nothing.
I don't really trust FIFA to do anything, if we're being honest.
Yeah, like Ball is a worse version of FIFA. FIFA. Do you think if FIFA is bad, Ball is worst?
Mm. Yeah, you never want to hear that. You never want to hear that you're worse than FIFA. So
Yo, Ball is definitely worse than FIFA.
yeah,
So many referee scandals, so many scandals. So and people and the resentment of Ball is going larger because of their stupid choice of having one game final in Libertadores, which it doesn't make sense because again, it's not like Europe where you can take a train and go to another country. You know, in South America, it's expensive to travel. You know,
mm,
leaving Brazil, you're going toward Ecuador, where the final is going to be at. It's probably going to be on the 2,000 to 4,000 reais, probably even more with tickets and everything.
yeah. I mean, just Europe is the one place that really can do that because it's so compact. Like even Asia, I mean, it's just Asia's way too big, and South America is bigger, even than Europe. So
But that's my rant. I hope something has to be done because it was disgraceful for me as a Brazilian, as a soccer fan, to see that situation. And I
mm,
mean, I wasn't at the stadium, but if I were, I would be repulsed by. And
oh yeah,
congratulations to the fan. I think his name is Fernando, who had the courage to go to the had the courage to go to the police and denounce the racist fan.
oh absolutely. I mean, yeah, we always love to see people who are brave enough to stand up to hate, and those people are the people that will always fight to make the world a better place. So that's always great to see. All right, to finish off this episode, I'm just going to kind of give a kind of not really a hot take, but a lukewarm take. I just want to shout out the fact that Champions League in America is on CBS now. Um, I saw both of the semifinals were on the main channel CBS, and I just think that's great. I think that showing how much this game of soccer is growing, how far it's gotten, and really it demonstrates, how the USMT is in a great spot to take advantage of the upcoming World Cups. The World Cups are going to be on main Fox. Champions League's on CBS. Premier League's all the time on mainline NBC now. Yeah, soccer is everywhere, and you have to take advantage of the moment. You can't let it just become a trend. That you got to find a way to make it one of the big sports in America. And I think this is a sign that it's another step in the right direction.
Oh yeah, because here in Brazil, Champions League has been on the normal cable channels for years. This year is SBT, which is a little bit like CBS. It's not the top dog, but it's number two, number three sometimes. And it was a good. They bet on it and they're profiting on it because when SBT puts Champions League on their afternoons, their rating go up. Sometimes for a couple of minutes stay number one, goes to number two on the ratings, but it's very popular here in Brazil, and I imagine America is going to be the same. And the product is good because what a game Manchester City and Real Madrid were.
Oh my
You
God.
know,
For
three
free.
two, a lot of good. Vinicius Junior. Great goal. What a performance! So I cannot wait for the second leg of the game. I know Liverpool two nil lead in the first game over Villarreal. I think is more favorable, but I I wouldn't count an English final again uh, just yet.
I'll say this: definitely, I feel like Liverpool's going to hang on pretty convincingly. Liverpool was pretty dominant. I mean, even when the score was 0-0 in that first half, they basically outscored them by 12. They had 12-1 shots. I mean, they controlled the ball that entire half. But definitely, I feel like Manchester City really they didn't do what they needed to do. They needed to win 4-2 or 4-1 because now, if you think about it, now Manchester City cannot lose at all unless they were to lose like 5-4 or 6.
No, no, there's no more. The away goal rule is does. There's no more away goal rule anymore.
Oh, I thought okay,
They got scrapped,
okay,
which I like it because this season has been a proven thing that away goal rule does not affect the outcome. It just make the game better. It just make more competitive
yeah,
because I think the away goal rule was a punishment for the team that hosted the second leg game because it just creates like a if they it rewards the first leg home team, but now it's equal playing level.
oh yeah, for sure. Um, I just that never made any sense. But the fact we're not going to get extra time and potentially a shootout, I mean that thing's going to go down to the wire. I would not be shocked if we got a penalty kick shootout.
I wouldn't as well. I think it's gonna go to penalties. I mean, I think it's gonna be like something like 2-1 Real Madrid or 3-2, and then the extra time is gonna be also crazy. But I think in the other leg, I think Liverpool, I think Villarreal is gonna give it a fight. I think they're probably gonna win the game, but I don't think they're gonna score 2 goals. They're not gonna have 2 goal differential
Yeah,
against this Liverpool team.
I think Liverpool's going to draw in that game. I think they'll draw like 1-1, and which will send Liverpool through. On the other end, I'm going to say Real Madrid wins 3-2, and then Manchester City finds a way to pull it out in extra time or in penalties. So I'm going Man City Liverpool for the final. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun semi down in God, I can't remember. I know Camp Nou is Barcelona. What's the one on Roman? What's Madrid's?
Santiago Bernabel.
Yeah, that,
And quick, do you saw the German invasion of Barcelona?
I did not.
So Eintracht Frankfurt drawn 35,000 fans to Barcelona to watch their team play. Barcelona in the Europe League quarterfinal, and this situation was so you know, was so bizarre that Barcelona front office wants to take actions to avoid that. And it was funny after that, they're now gonna renovate Camp Nou. I think they're gonna, play in the Olympic Stadium in Barcelona probably starting next season. Because I think they wanna do something different because it was just the epitome of how Barcelona fans became so, uh, you know, indifferent toward their team.
Mhm.
And a lot of fans, hardcore Barcelona fans, were not surprised by that because they claimed that Barcelona uh, soccer team became like a tourist attraction, not a sports team.
Yeah, I mean, one time they were the greatest soccer team in the world, and they're just not that anymore. You know that they don't have Messi or they don't have Neymar.
Neymar or Suarez or Ronaldinho like they used to have.
Yeah, I mean, and that team was just electric. I mean, even people who didn't really know soccer, they knew Barcelona was that team. And you got to give credit to Real Madrid. They found a way to still be really, really good. Even after their prime years too were done, but um, Barcelona just was not able to do the same.
Yeah, Real Madrid, with all their flaws, is has been able to remain competitive even after Cristiano Ronaldo left. It's just a testimony of how Real Madrid front office, especially in the figure of Real Madrid president, you know, and the front office as a whole, just show how strong their team is. So and Florentino Perez. Florentino Perez is one of the best soccer presidents of all time. He always able to keep his team relevant, competitive. Real Madrid has been dominating Europe for the past decade. Winning back to back to back titles, and even after Cristiano Ronaldo left, they're still being able to remain competitive. But Karim Benzema, has have one of the most dominant seasons ever, and he was an aging player. So, I think Real Madrid is going to be a heavily favorite if he makes to the finals. But I cannot wait for this round two of Real Madrid Manchester City. I wish this was the final. Nothing against Liverpool, nothing against Villarreal, but this was the real final. This was the big deal.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and just saying Manchester City and Real Madrid, you get you get the bigness just from the name, saying the name of the matchup alone. I mean, just imagine just for Manchester United and Real Madrid, just the history that both of those clubs were to present. But I mean, Manchester City. I mean, they've obviously over the past decade have become what Manchester United used to be.
Oh, definitely. Manchester United, they got the new head coach, but there's gonna take a long, long, long time to rebuild. It's gonna be a bumpy because especially after uh, Sir Alex Ferguson left, you know, and probably that's what's gonna happen with Alabama football when Nick Saban left. It's gonna be a hard. It's gonna be hard to find the replacement because again, Alex Ferguson stayed in the club from 1986 to 2013. He won almost all of Manchester United Premier League. He won he won Premier League, Champions League, FA Cup. He won all the titles he could possibly have. And since he left, Manchester United have not won a Premier League, only won FA Cup and European League, which is tier two of titles in England.
Yeah. While we're on this subject, I want to, because I came across Everton and Liverpool the other day, the Merseyside Derby, and I did not realize that Everton was so bad this year, 18th, and like legitimately now at threatening the relegation. Just what in the world? Because Everton used to be a pretty solid team, never a title contender. When they had Tim Howard, they were like a top 10 team in England. But, I mean, what in the world happened to Everton?
I think it's a side of what happens to those kind of tier two, tier three teams in England. You just have so much inconsistency because it's hard to keep good players when you have good seasons. It's hard to compete with the Manchester Cities, Liverpools, United. So it's such a inconsistent. Again, they're still 2 points behind Burnley in the relegation zone. They lost 4 out of the last 5 games. They're gonna play at home versus Chelsea, which is another hard game. But I probably don't see them relegated, but it's gonna be a big fight. I'm also disappointed with Leeds United. I had so much expectations with them, especially having Marcelo Bielsa. But again, Premier League is the hardest league in Europe. That's for sure. Because, for example, I don't think if Everton were in Portugal or Spain, he would have been a top 10. But in England, he in the bottom.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting too, just looking at the table, how Manchester City and Liverpool, they're both fighting to potentially play each other in the Champions League, but they are also fighting for the Premier League title as well, like a point away from each other.
Oh yeah, I mean Manchester City and Liverpool are drawing such a rivalry, and they played a couple of weeks ago for the Premier League game. I think it was like early March, early April. It was one of the best games of the season, even though it was a draw 2-2. Was such an electric game, and and this draw helped Manchester City keep the lead 1 point, but City fans kind of argue that if they won that game, they would have been even more further on the top of the league.
Yeah. I mean, Premier League definitely, it's insane how much better it's gotten over the years. And just now it's by far the best European league at this time.
But yeah, I just then to finalize my point, I don't know if I mentioned this on the last show or not, but this month was Hillsborough Disaster Awareness Month. And the 15th of April, 1989, 96 now is 97 fans died due to the crushing of the Liverpool fans in the Leppings Lane end on the Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield on the FA Cup semifinal. And of course, every April there, and it's a fun fact: Liverpool does not play on April 15th ever again.
Mm.
They always reschedule games. They always trying to find new dates, but they never. The Liverpool Football Club, they don't play on April 15th ever again, because every April 15th they hold a memory, like a not, not the like a service memory for the fans who passed away on that day in 1989. And it's it's just as we finish up April, that's and we talk about European football and Liverpool, that's something as a soccer fan is always shocking to me,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
how bad that chaos went, how mistreated the fans were in that game. Of course, with that disaster came the modernization of English football. If Premier League is so dominant today, it all started on that day, because with that disaster, Lord Justice Taylor introduced the new regulations for English Stadium, which abolished the terraces, and English team had to modernize that stadium. And then 3 years later, in 1992, the Premier League was introduced. So I guess in a way that disaster promoted, pushed the English football to the modernization that has benefited today. We know having the top teams in the world and the top stadiums, but it all started on that day. Unfortunately, it's just sad that 97 fans have to pass away for all that to happen.
Yeah, it's always a reminder too when you're in a big crowd like that to always be aware of what's going on. If you believe it's starting to get too crowded for where you are, get out. Because it still happens. I mean, we saw it a couple of months ago at Astroworld in Houston at the Travis Scott concert. And your crushes, they're an unfortunate possibility anytime you're in a crowd. And it's not to like say, stay away from crowds because, going to a big time sport event is fun. Going to a big time concert is fun. But just make sure that you're kind of monitoring. You just want to make sure that the people who are running the event are being smart. And you always just want to be aware in case, the crowd starts to panic. You don't, because when you get in a crush like that, it literally picks you up like you're in a wave in the ocean. And then you're just along for the ride at that point.
Oh yeah, it was, but it's hard, and I'm gonna show like some footage of how bad the crowd was on that day, because the problem in that day was that fan section, the fans, there were no escape. The fans, the only way they could have left that area was either they're gonna have to jump through that big fence, which the police did not allow it, or they would have to go to the side pans. But they have, imagine on the fan on the middle between pans 3 and 4, there were no options to leave. It was a bottleneck. That section, the Leppings Lane section of the stadium, was a trap. It was a disgrace,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
that promoted the a lot of English fans are trying to get back into terraces, into standing only sections. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon, because why in the why in the world English teams want to go back to the past when they're profiting so much what they have right now? They don't want to go back to those days.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we have ticketing, because I mean, one of the problems with the Hillsborough disasters, everyone came in at once, and because people were just so like, oh, we got to get to this pitch, we got to get to the pitch. They didn't really care, who they're if they were having to push people in front to get there, and that crush all the people who are at the front.
No, yeah, and the policing, were such a disaster that day. That's why a couple of years ago it was finally ruled that was a police mismanagement, and the police was to blame to the disaster, because they couldn't control the crowd outside, and then when the crowd outside got so bad, they opened the gates and the people got into the only entrance they saw, which was the tunnel to the center of the stadium. But at least English football was improved by that day, so the legacy moved on, and that's why I want to finish those today, remembering, since this month is Hillsborough Disaster Awareness Month for Liverpool fans. So that's why I want to again remind that of those fans. They never came home, and because for me, it close to home because I'm a big soccer fan. I went to soccer fans all over the world, so you know, I just couldn't even imagine you going to a game and never coming back.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel the same way coming to any football game, any basketball game, baseball, hockey. I mean, NASCAR race. I mean, motorsport races too. I mean, that's an event where fans are in danger, and you don't really ever really think about it. But you never know when a tire's going to go over the fence, or like the 1955 Le Mans disaster, where the whole car went into the crowd and killed people. And that's why you see catch fences and see all of the modernization and modern motorsport safety. So, but even then, even with all the equipment, sometimes a tire can still get over that fence. So it's you're
Again, you just mentioned this year there was a crowd disaster in a concert in America,
yeah.
so
So
it just showed that it can still happen this year.
exactly. If you go to a place where like the organizers don't know what they're doing, like in the case of Astroworld, that can still happen.
But that's it for episode 24 of Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports podcast. We'll be back Tuesday, right, Nick?
Oh yeah, we will be back Tuesday, where our friend Dylan Becker is going to come on, and we're going to discuss some Stanley Cup playoffs. Talk about who is going to hoist the Lord Stanley Cup. Hopefully, it's the Nashville Predators, but we will see.
For Nicholas Hill down in beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee, I'm Gus Tomazeli here in Americana, São Paulo, Brazil, and we'll go back next time.
Came to make it hot. We beat the fire starter.